Did you know the Caribbean has been battling hurricanes for over 500 years? Long before satellites, weather apps, or early warning systems, the people of these islands lived in rhythm with the sea and in fear of the sky. The story begins long before Columbus ever sailed across the Atlantic. The first peoples of the Caribbean, the Taíno, the Arawak, and the Kalinago, already knew the power of the storm. They called it Hurakán, the great spirit of the wind. Homes were built round so the gales would pass around them, and villages were often set back from open coasts. Even today, the very word hurricane comes from that Taíno name. When Christopher Columbus reached Jamaica in 1494, he wrote in his journal of a storm so fierce that the sea rose against the heavens. His ships barely survived, and the Taíno people warned him, "Hurakán has woken." It became the first European record of a Caribbean hurricane, the first written proof of a cycle that had been part of island life for millennia. As European powers fought for control of the islands, the storms became silent participants in empire. In 1655, just after the English seized Jamaica from Spain, a violent hurricane scattered the Spanish counterfleet and sealed England's grip on the island. To the soldiers who survived, it felt like divine intervention. In 1692, Port Royal, then one of the richest and most infamous ports in the world, was shattered by an earthquake and later lashed by tropical storms that erased whole streets. Survivors swore they saw barrels of sugar floating beside coffins. They said God had punished the wickedest city on earth. 3 decades later, in 1722, another massive hurricane ripped through Port Royal. Ships were hurled onto land, rum warehouses burst open and sent sweet brown rivers down the lanes. Pirate lore claims that gold from Henry Morgan's time was washed into the harbor that day and never found again. By the late 18th century, the Caribbean was the heart of the world's sugar trade and the stage for some of its greatest storms. In October 1780, the Great Hurricane struck Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, and Jamaica. Winds were estimated above 200 millimeters. Entire plantations disappeared. One eyewitness in Barbados wrote, "The air was full of flying roofs, trees, and men." Over 20,000 lives were lost across the region, making it the deadliest Atlantic hurricane in recorded history. Jamaica's cane fields lay flattened. Famine followed for months. Through the 19th century, the pattern repeated. In 1831, a hurricane destroyed Bridgetown, Barbados, and left the island in ruins. In 1899, the San Ciriaco hurricane pounded Puerto Rico for a full day, killing more than 3,000 people and pushing the island into economic collapse. In Jamaica, the 1903 hurricane unleashed torrents that tore up railways and washed away villages in St. Mary and Portland parishes. Newspapers carried headlines such as, "A Night of Terror and Prayer." The 20th century brought radio, telegraphs, and new hope for warnings. But not even technology could tame the wind. In 1951, Hurricane Charlie struck Jamaica with such force that entire churches lost their roofs. It was one of the first storms tracked in real time, and listeners crowded around radios for updates. In 1963, Hurricane Flora swept over Cuba and Haiti. Fidel Castro later called it a war without an enemy. In 1980, Hurricane Allen became one of the strongest ever measured in the Atlantic, its 190 mph winds brushing Jamaica before devastating St. Lucia and Haiti. Then came Hurricane Gilbert in 1988, the name every Jamaican still remembers. It roared across the island as a Category 3 storm, its eye slicing through Kingston and Clarendon. Houses splintered, power lines collapsed, banana trees lay like matchsticks. One Kingston resident recalled, "The wind sounded like 100 jets taking off. We held the doors with our hands till morning." Yet in the aftermath, communities came together, neighbors cooking for each other on coal stoves, children collecting rainwater in buckets, music returning before the lights did. Gilbert became both a tragedy and a lesson in unity. The new millennium brought even more violent seasons. Hurricane Ivan in 2004 passed just west of Jamaica but caused catastrophic flooding. In Grenada, 90% of homes were damaged. Hurricane Dean in 2007 hit Jamaica directly, wiping out much of the banana industry. Hurricane Sandy in 2012 crossed Jamaica before growing into the massive storm that struck the United States. Proof that what begins in the Caribbean can shake entire continents. Then, in 2017, came the twin nightmares, Irma and Maria. Irma obliterated Barbuda and St. Martin. Maria flattened Dominica and Puerto Rico. Entire grids were down for months. One Dominican farmer said, "It felt like the island itself screamed." Even as recovery continued, the storms grew stranger. Tropical Storm Nicole in 2010 and Fiona in 2022 showed how even smaller systems could unleash deadly floods. And then Hurricane Beryl in 2024 broke every rule. Forming unusually early, it intensified into a Category 5 monster, tearing across Grenada, Jamaica, and the Cayman Islands. Meteorologists were stunned. Jamaicans described the calm eye as a silence that made your skin crawl. When the winds returned, they came with double fury. Streets became rivers, yet once again the people endured. Neighbors rescuing neighbors, churches opening as shelters, radio DJs broadcasting through static just to say, "Hold strong, we de ya." Across 5 centuries, the Caribbean has rebuilt again and again. Wooden houses have become concrete bunkers. Warnings now arrive by text and satellite. But the core lesson remains unchanged. You cannot control the storm, only your preparation and your spirit. From the Taíno who named Hurakán, to Columbus who feared it, to the farmers who still tie down their roofs every June. The story of the Caribbean is the story of resilience. Jamaica, Barbados, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominica, Grenada, and all the islands in between share a single truth. The wind may break wood and stone, but it has never broken their will. So next time thunder rolls across the Caribbean sky, remember. These islands have stood in the path of hurricanes for half a millennium. They have bent, but never broken, and in every gust of wind, there's the echo of centuries saying, "We will rise again."